r/askreddit by Redify. What unsolved mystery has absolutely no plausible explanation? My sister lost her car key, and it turned up buried in my grandmother's garden. She lives 2 hours away, and we see her 2-3 times a year. Edit. Answers to commonly asked questions. No dogs involved. My grandmother loves to garden, so found it while gardening somehow. My grandmother never had a copy of the key. We rarely visited her, and my dad spent half the year overseas. Our only relative/person that we have contact with who also has contact with her. The most likely prankster wasn't around when my sister lost the key originally. There were 2 sets of the key, but I held one until my sister lost hers, at which point I gave her mine. My only semi-plausible explanation is that my sister thought she lost the key, visited our grandma a few weeks later and actually lost the key somehow, fell out of her bag/car something, and then it turned up later. I have no idea how that would have happened though. That'll show those little duckers for not visiting me more often. Or alternatively, those little duckers always showing up. See how far they get without keys. I had a wristwatch that my dad bought me back in the 90s. It was one of those kinetic watches that would wind itself when you walk etc. Anyway, for some reason it kept stopping at around 1:30 AM. Never 1:30 in the afternoon. Sometimes it would keep going, but 3 times out of 5 it would stop at the exact time. We sent it to the swatch company to get repaired, and a month or 2 later we got a catalog of watches with a handwritten note basically saying we don't know what the hell is wrong with your watch. We are stumped. Pick a watch out of this catalog and have it as a replacement. So that's my possessed watch story. I was waiting for you to say. Then one day your dad died at 1:30 AM. I'm glad your dad didn't die at 1:30 AM. I thought he was going to get a bunch of new watches that all stopped at 1:30. World being creepy as duck. But nope lol. I had one of those incredible Hulk face ice creams you get from the ice cream truck. I took a bite and watched as the rest of it fell off the stick. Only to look down and see nothing on the ground. I still don't know what happened to my ice cream. I want my money back. Edit. Didn't expect this to get so much attention. I love you all, but replying to all comments would take me years. Cool to see others having similar experiences. Ants. Don't duck around. A personal mystery of mine. My uncle's best friend/coworker just disappeared one day. Uncle came to his job site one day, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and his coworker never showed up. Uncle went to his house. I might add that the coworker lived in a neighborhood of houses that belonged to DWP that were given to the workers there. When he arrived, he found his truck parked outside with the door and tailgate open, keys in ignition with uncashed checks on the dashboard and a gun in the passenger seat. He went over to the house and found the garage door open and front door unlocked. My uncle went in and found his place was filled with junk along with more guns, more uncashed checks and a full uneaten meal. Uncle searched all around the house, which was up against a hill, and searched the surrounding area and worksite. Then locked everything and went to his boss, who couldn't have cared less about the matter. Uncles ended up having to call the police himself, but since the coworker didn't have any immediate family who cared about him, the police didn't bother doing an extensive search. To this day, that house remains there abandoned with all his stuff in it, and no one could care less about his disappearance. So sad. Edit. Holy duck, why did my comment about my uncle's friend's depressing disappearance blow up like this? I'm really glad though, cause this guy lived alone and had no friends besides my uncle, and no family. It's nice to know at least a few people will remember him, or he was a covert Russian spy, mob boss, or drug dealer who deserved his untimely demise. Very peculiar. Explanations could range from murder to leading some kind of double life, like a corporate spy maybe, to sudden witness protection. Edit. Mental illness is a box I checked off, but didn't want to bring up so as not to insinuate anything. As a sufferer of mental illnesses myself, the stigma is depressing. Double life, yes. But all those guns and uncashed checks don't add up for some corporate espionage. This looks more like a dirty money laundry scheme of some sort going wrong, and he had to flee as soon as possible. My mum inherited a watch from her grandmother. It was the old-fashioned kind that needed to be wound all the time. Obviously. Anyway, one day it went missing. And despite turning the house upside down, she couldn't find it anywhere. In the end she just accepted it had gone. Cut to a few years later. And we had moved house. We'd been in the new place for about 6 months. And one night she woke up and turned the light on. And the watch was sitting on her bedside table. Wound and showing the correct time. She totally believes in ghosts and is confident her grandmother found it and brought it back to her. Edit. Mum and dad were separated. And I was the oldest kid. About 10 at the time. My brother was 6. And my sister 4. Not one of us. I was thinking that's one really polite thief who had his time with it already. Yeah, I've got time. A personal mystery. I was at a Taco Bell / KFC joint. Waiting on an order. There are 5 people in the room. Me, Daniel, a security guard, 2 kids, and the cashier. Suddenly, a child says look at Daniel and I look over at them and they're both staring at me. The security guard / cashier both had name tags. So I know they weren't Daniel's. The 2 kids had said each other's name, so I know they weren't Daniel's. I felt kinda spooked. But I just moved on from it. Did you have a sibling around their age? They might have told them about you. Can I get a name for your order? I was in high school waiting for my bus to pull up, and I was kinda just zoned out. There were kids talking, and I was just kinda absorbing the noise from it all. There was a group of kids talking close to me, and I hear one of them say that they didn't understand something about a game that I was familiar with. So I kinda butt in and answer the question. Him and his buddy were Asian, and they are just kinda staring at me in disbelief. So I apologize, because I felt like I had been kinda rude. The one who had been talking said that it was fine, but he didn't expect me to understand Korean. He and his friend were foreign exchange students from South Korea, and at that moment he had been speaking in his native language. I heard him, as if he had spoken plain English, and when he did speak in English it wasn't as plain as what I had heard. I still have no idea how I understood him in that brief moment. Edit. Wow. I didn't expect this comment to get so many upvotes. Let me try and add a bit more to this. Yes. They could have been messing with me. The thought actually crossed my mind at the time, but I've no way of knowing. I'd never met them before that point and I'd never heard Korean, to my knowledge, before then. It would be a rare language in my area. Like as far as languages that I've heard in this area goes 90% English, 9% Spanish, 0.9% German, 0.1% other. It's been brought up several times that Korean has lifted a lot of English into its language and maybe I picked up on that. I'm not saying that's impossible. But in my mind I heard a conversation in plain English, as if I were talking to someone with zero accent, and I heard a specific question asked dealing with a character's actions and such. I don't think hearing broken English through that dialect would allow me to understand and answer such a complicated question. Gamer's instinct. All StarCraft players can understand each other. But I think he talks BS. No way a foreigner knows something about SC that a Korean doesn't. This happened a few years ago to my brother and my mom. It was parent-teacher conference at my brother's high school, literally the largest high school in the US with about 6,000 students, and after waiting forever to finally meet with the teacher they walk in and sit down. The teacher then says that our father was just in there right before them, and my mom was shocked and told him that there was no way. The teacher insists that he just walked out and gives his name and a perfect description of my father. Very tall man with a lot of freckles, brown hair and a thick mustache, and summarizes their meeting. My mom then informs him that my father has been dead for over 10 years and is in disbelief. The teacher had absolutely no background of our family and no way of knowing this, is shocked himself. To this day we have no idea what happened that day. He faked his death, but still wanted to check in on his kids from time to time. That is just as unsettling as the idea of a ghost, if not more so. I was given a potato in school, cannot for the life of me remember why, and I was having a weirdly good time playing with it. I went into my room and started throwing it up in the air and catching it. But one time I threw it up, it just seemed to inexplicably curve backwards over my head. I heard it thump on the ground. But when I turned around to pick it up, it was gone. I spent 10 minutes looking everywhere for it and it just wasn't there. When we moved house a year later and I was emptying my room, I fully expected to find a gross, rotting potato somewhere. But still, it was nowhere to be found. I asked my parents and even my sister if they'd found and got rid of a potato in my room. Nobody had any idea about it. I'm going to spend the rest of my life wondering where the hell that potato went. If it was there, you would have smelled it. Exactly. That suggests it just vanished instantly, which makes it stranger. I went to visit my mom's house to go say goodbye to my dog before my mom was going to take him to get put to sleep since he was really sick. I didn't want that to happen yet, so I was arguing with her about it for a while. At one point my dog wanders off and I don't see him for a while. I couldn't find him. Figured he was out chillin' in the horse pasture as he was wont to do. It was dark and he wasn't coming when I called. I just thought he was doing his thing. I was sad I couldn't say one last goodbye, but I had to get going. I walked to the front of the house where I was parked, and the little asshole was in my car, sitting in the driver's seat looking at me with that stupid look he always got on his face when it was time for a car ride. I started crying right then. I'm crying right now. My windows were all the way up. My doors were locked. I had the only key. To this day I have no earthly idea how the ducky got in there. I miss that ducking dog. R.I.P. Barky. But did you give him a car ride? Once I composed myself. Yes. We cruised out to the levee and hung out together one last time. Listening to all the frogs that came out at night. It was nice. That was a long time ago. He's been gone longer than he was alive at this point. That ducks me up. As much as I think it was the parents, the Madeleine McCann disappearance just has gaps in every theory. None of the forensic or crime scene information suggests a break-in. And it would have to have been opportunism of the highest order. Similarly, the parents may well have had something to do with it, but it does seem unlikely they'd have had the time to hide her body. Or it would have been unlikely they'd have arranged such a massive search. I don't think we'll ever know. Interesting observations. And yes, I totally agree with you. I live a couple of villages over from the McCanns. And you can now pick up a sense that even local people are thinking bad things about the parents. It doesn't help that every 6 months we see a news article saying that another PS 150,000 has been provided to fund the search. Even assuming, massive assumption, that Madeleine is still alive. She could now be anywhere on the planet. And she has now spent nearly 4 times as long with her abductors as she ever did with her parents. If she were to turn up tomorrow, she would be one messed up kid. She'd have to go back to parents she doesn't even know. It's all very sad. As a parent, you'd never stop looking. I think what bugs most people is that this money is thrown at the investigation. And the police seemingly aren't allowed to investigate the most obvious suspects. There is so much about the whole thing that absolutely stinks. Who the Zodiac Killer truly is. There are a dozen or so semi-reasonable theories, but there's no real way to ever know who the real Zodiac Killer was. So you're saying it wasn't Ted Cruz? No. He's a blobfish. Lost my class ring when I was 20. About 8-10 months later I moved 1,000 miles away. Only brought a few clothes in my car. Someone hit me and totaled my car while there, twice. Be careful driving in Florida. Bought a new car, twice. Lived there for a year. Then moved about 200 miles away. A month after moving to the new town I receive a call from a church. They received a donation of clothes. While sorting them out they found a class ring with my name etched inside the band. My new home number came up when they searched my name. The church was about 2 miles from where we just moved. My wife didn't get rid or donate any clothes. I thought it must be a mistake, but decided to go take a look. Sure enough, it was mine. I looked through the clothes they found it in, and they weren't mine or my wife's. Still no idea how it could have ended up 1,100 miles from where I lost it. Someone picked it up, perhaps intending to research the name and return it. Put it in their pocket, and forgot about it. Maybe moved themselves, I mean. You wound up there. so it's reasonable someone else from the same area would too. Eventually donated clothes. Church sorters actually followed through looking. I want the life and journey of this ring made into a movie. Stat. Personal that I've told before. When I was about 20, I had a bunch of dreams featuring a man. He had long, very straight black hair, very tan, really bright blue eyes, and eyebrows like Michael Keaton. He always had this calmly threatening demeanor, even when he was furious. And he had an air of evil to him. He was the main antagonist in any nightmare I had for about a year. Anyway, one night, I had a dream that I was walking down the street. It was a bright day, but all the light was almost dark, if that makes any sense, which is also a common theme in my nightmares. There was a woman walking about half a block in front of me with really curly hair. She was crossing a side street when the man appeared around the corner and started following her. I freaked out, knowing he was a threat to her, and tried to yell a warning. Nothing came out other than squeaks. I tried to run and help her, but could barely move. The man slowly looked back to me and very calmly said, "This one's mine." He caught up to her, and I watched helplessly as he decapitated her before waking up. I usually talked about my nightmares with a friend, but this one I kept to myself. About a week later, I was hanging out with a group of my friends, and there was a girl there with really curly hair I had never met. Eventually someone started talking about dreams, and she told us about a nightmare she had had about a week before. She damn near perfectly described the dream I had, only from the point of view of the woman in mine, even describing the man in detail, knowing there was someone else about a half a block behind her, and being confused when the man said, "This one's mine," before ripping her head off. I would dismissed this had I told anyone of the dream I had, but as I said, I kept this one to myself. That's actually really cool. Imagine if all our dreams actually take place in the same universe. They're all part of the same series. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.